Hello, and welcome to a Checkpoint Chat review. Another one? Another Assassin's Creed. There's more.
There's so many.
I'm joined by Matthew Eivor Figuera.
My middle name in the
Viking
flesh.
Viking extraordinaire.
Listen, the Portuguese were explorers, but I don't think you could call them Vikings per se.
I wouldn't call them Vikings either. We are the Porras. That's a distinct label
explorers.
that we hold to.
Yeah.
The Vikings didn't put eggs on their steaks.
No, look where they are today.
Extinct. Exactly. You see?
Well, who do we have now? Just the Danish? I mean, come on. You don't call them Vikings.
No. And they still don't put eggs on their steaks. So clearly they're just doing everything wrong. But what wasn't being done wrong? Well, I guess I don't know if it will be done wrong. But there was a siege in Paris in the 9th century. Is that when this happens?
Yeah, the late 800s. If my research is correct, I guess.
That's a long time ago.
It's a real long time ago.
So whenever I hear of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, The Siege of Paris, the latest expansion and DLC for this, let's just say bursting at the seams adventure. Whenever I hear Paris, I'm like, oh, sick! I get to climb the Eiffel Tower. I'm like, wait, that didn't exist yet.
This is the problem. I mean, we sidetracking it very briefly, but this is what I was saying to you at some point this week, that when Assassin's Creed has I've only played Valhalla, but you get to go to London. There was the other DLC you got to go to Ireland, and I always think, man, I'm going to see all these landmarks. Get to London, I'm like, I don't recognize any of this stuff because
you see no pubs, no fish and chips.
There's no Big Ben. There's
Damn! How can you have an Assassin's Creed without Big Ben?
What is this? And then I suppose with the Siege of Paris, your gut reaction is like, oh, cool, man! I can see the Eiffel Tower like way back when, but obviously this is said long before that. So
no, the Eiffel Tower was still underground. It still needed to sprout.
It needed to grow. They needed to add more water for a few centuries.
Exactly. We all know that's how it worked. So the Siege of Paris, it's another sort of like standalone-ish Assassin's Creed thing. I mean, when we spoke about the one set in Ireland, what was that one called? Something Druids?
Wrath of the Druids?
Wrath of the Druids, yeah.
I hope I'm not getting that wrong now.
You piqued my interest because you're like, this seems like a standalone adventure that can be finished in like 10 to 15 hours. And I'm like, that sounds like the Assassin's Creed I want to play again.
Yeah,
So yeah.
So the Wrath of the Druids, like you said, I mean, if you've played Valhalla and thought, man, this is too long, I want a condensed experience. Wrath of the Druids was perfect in that regard, in that you could finish it, in not 50 to 100 hours. It's a lot shorter. Yeah. I thought for people like you and anyone else who's sort of thought in that camp, the DLC is perfect. And of course, for anyone who's, on the opposite end of the spectrum, who really just wants more, another excuse to be Eivor and go, pillage and do all sorts of things. The DLCs, it just fits, I guess. But the Siege of Paris is very much the same in that it can be done in 6 to 10 hours for all the core stuff. And then I suppose you're looking at 12 to 15 if you want to sort of tick everything off the checklist that it has to offer. And it's based in Paris. The narratively it takes place, I suppose, during and or after the main narrative of Vahalla. Anything you do in Paris doesn't have any sort of impact in the main game, if that makes sense. You're not gonna go to Paris and come back and then all the English people will be like, oh yes, did you bring me some omelette du fromage?
Did you bring me my omelette of cheese?
My omelette of cheese. But yeah, it's completely self-contained, and like Wrath of the Druids, the setup is that Eivor has sort of made a name for himself, and people come seeking his help. This time in France, where Charles the Fat, that's an actual figure of history. Charles the Fat.
The Fat.
The Fat is
not like
ruling.
Charles the Third or the 50th.
No.
Or
This is an actual figure of history, Charles the Fat. So he's doing his thing in France, and Eivor being the good wolf-kissed, very much problem solver / Viking muscle / village pillager extraordinaire is like, yeah, sure, I'll come offer my counsel and my hand in whatever's going on there. And then what follows is pretty much the standard Assassin's Creed Valhalla formula, where you get given a narrative thread you can follow. Very much a thing of you offer your aid to someone, you go do some quests for them, move on to the next area. So yeah, it's very stock standard in that way. But you'd think with France being a completely different setting, there might be opportunity to make the game look visually different in some ways. Like I found, I don't know, there's something about Ireland where in the Wrath of the Druids DLC where it kind of looked similar, but at the same time, I know this doesn't make sense, it didn't. There was a different sort of charm to it. Whereas the French countryside, for all intents and purposes, feels very much identical to the sorts of vistas you explore in the base game anyway. Like, I can't really tell you the difference between either or, apart from maybe the odd vineyard here and there, because, France, wine, champagne, oui.
Oui.
But I suppose that... Sorry, go for it.
So, like, I'm not super familiar with this sort of period in time. So does the Siege of... I mean, I know the Siege of Paris is a big historical event in Viking lore, really, and not really lore, like actual history.
Yes.
So do you get to experience that through the lens of Assassin's Creed, or is it sort of just like a window dressing?
No, so you do actually do... You undertake, you put Paris under siege, in simple enough terms, where there is a point in the main narrative where you are asked to, or, at least assist in sieging Paris and then doing all sorts of things outside and inside Paris, everything relating to that. And I mean, I don't know how much this ties into history, accurately. I can't tell you this is a one-for-one recreation where even if there wasn't somebody called Eivor way back when, this is what happened. To me, it seems more like it's just an excuse to showcase this piece and like loosely follow what did happen. And I'm not going to go into details for spoiler purposes, obviously, but I don't think it's historically like this is exactly what happened all those years ago. Now we've just put our own accurate spin on it, just with Eivor as the main person or whoever. But yeah, you do get to actually undertake a mission that lets you do that, which is pretty cool. I mean, I did enjoy that. But I suppose the biggest difference in this expansion, apart from it being stock standard Valhalla, which look, it's not a bad thing, right? Like if you enjoy the structure of this Assassin's Creed, you're not going to be disappointed because there are new quests and new people to meet, and there's new gear, and there's a whole lot of things you can do in and around the map.
You can keep making those numbers go up.
You can keep grinding out your power levels. There are new abilities to unlock.
Feed more souls to Milnir.
I wish. But I mean, it's just your stock standard Assassin's Creed Valhalla experience, apart from some, new additions. So I suppose the biggest one here is the return of, I think it's called Black Box missions, which, being someone who's never played an Assassin's Creed, this is something I had to look up. I think Assassin's Creed Unity, which coincidentally enough is also set in France, was where this feature sort of came about, and it followed through to Syndicate, and then, as you all know, Origins rebooted the franchise, and this feature sort of just disappeared. But just to put it in simple terms, it kind of feels like a Hitman-esque in nature, where you're basically put into an environment, told, here's your target, and then like do whatever you can to off them. So I don't think, look, having never played a Hitman, you can correct me on this, but my understanding is that Hitman lets you get really creative with, the way you can eliminate your target, whether it be I suppose like environmental elimination, or just a straight up walking up to them, shooting them, and then escaping, for example.
Yes.
In the Siege of Paris, it's kind of, I don't think the creative freedom is that. It doesn't have that same sort of
yeah, because all of Hitman's levels
like
are kind of
variety, I guess.
centered around that theme. I assume
Yeah.
these black box missions are segmented to certain areas within.
Yeah, look, I stand to be corrected, but I do think that you can only find a handful of ways to eliminate your target. Like aside from just straight up running up to them and offing them, there are some, cinematic, often gruesome ways to end them, but like contextualized based on what you've done to get to that point. Okay. So like a good example is one of the first black box missions you get. It's like, oh, you need to, well, one of the early ones, you need to go fight this priest, or off this priest, whatever.
One does.
As one does, in Valhalla. But they're holed up in a church now. So how are you going to get in there? And like two of the options I found was one, following one set of clues. So when I say you pursue an option, it's like you explore the environment, you maybe overhear a conversation, or you steal a key, or you follow a whole set of clues, which opens up a certain route to the target. So in this instance, this person's in the church. I ended up doing two means, like not intentionally, just by pure accident. I ended up getting a key to the church, but I also ended up getting a passcode, which gave me access. I said it to the guards. And they
so
let me in.
Two ways to get it. That does sound very. It almost sounds like a immersive sim in a way, like a Dishonored or a Deus Ex.
Exactly. So look, I mean, this is just my experience. I don't know. I can't tell you there are 5 to 10 or 20 ways to get rid of this priest, but in my playthrough there were two options in this instance where I ended up just doing both purely by mistake. And like from in that regard, I think black box missions are very cool. They fit the Assassin's Creed background, I guess, because Vahalla, for all intents and purposes, doesn't, to me anyway, feel like an assassin game. You really are just running in and doing your thing, and stealth is sort of, on the back seat.
Yeah, it definitely seems to prioritize combat over stealth. That's the impression I got from it, yeah.
Whereas the black box missions, you're more incentivized, well, not necessarily more incentivized, but there's merit in not just fighting everything in sight and just listening and exploring, to find either a direct way to your target or just, a way to your target if it's not immediately obvious, which is pretty cool. Like, I enjoyed that.
It's interesting because I think I told you this, but that is in a very rudimentary way at the core of how Assassin's Creed started, really. I mean, Assassin's Creed 1 was very much go to City A, do quote-unquote side missions to collect hints about your target. And once you have enough hints, then you can go assassinate your target. But you can also do more side quests, get more information, and that will but give you more insight into maybe alternative ways to reach your target more stealthily or something. And this was back in when was the first one? 2007, run about there?
Yeah, long time ago.
So to hear that it's back in Valhalla, actually makes me want to play this DLC a lot, because I feel like that's what Assassin's Creed has moved away from. And even if it's just here as a, the fact that it's a back of the box feature when it's literally what the foundations of the series is built on, just shows you how different this iteration is. But I'm excited.
Yeah.
For it to come back. And I hope it does come back more. Because, I mean, when Valhalla was announced, they made a big deal about social stealth, which was in Assassin's Creed 2. And I was like, sweet, they're going back to a stealth-based focus. But then that didn't really pan out. So I'm hoping maybe if Black Box is received well, it forms a new basis for how they design missions in wherever they go next.
Yeah, I mean, I think one nice thing about this DLC is that it almost acts as a means to just experiment, because it's not the full-fledged game, right? It's just a slice of content, which obviously gives the team some room to maybe just experiment on a smaller scale and be like, oh, okay, well, people really enjoyed this, or oh, they didn't. Let's not pursue this again. But I
Mm.
mean, I really enjoyed it, and I think from what I've seen on the Twitter sphere and just general conversation, it seems like a good move and something I'd love to see more of. I mean, Assassin's Creed's going to it's moving towards a live service model, right? At some point, it would make sense, to have this is a sort of content that could very easily slot into whatever they have planned, where every week you get a mission, or every month, whatever it is, like you get different pieces of content built in this manner. So yeah, that could be quite cool.
So I can't remember if you mentioned, but how long did it take you to finish this?
It took me about 6 to 7 hours, but that was me literally mainlining, like really, really making my way through it because, timelines and hitting embargoes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you play it at a normal pace, it should take you about 8 to 10 hours to do the, just that's just the main narrative. There are some side things to do, which I think will push that number up to about 15 hours.
That's a pretty decent return, I think. I think that, again, just like Wrath of the Druids
Yeah.
Island expansion.
Yeah, that I played a lot slower. That was about 10 hours, I'd say.
Yeah. So I mean that's awesome. Like if I can have a slice of Valhalla or a slice of Assassin's Creed that is condensed like that and good, hell yeah, I'm happy. So yeah, I'm again just like the island expansion. I'm keen to check this out, and even if maybe it's not like if it's more of the same for people who've been putting hundreds and hundreds of hours into Valhalla, maybe that's like not what they wanted from this expansion. So I guess it's good to point that out. But as a
Yeah.
standalone thing, these expansions are sounding like how I want to experience the series, and not in
Yeah.
its 80-hour breadth.
I mean, yeah, that's why I feel like there are two specific kinds of people who enjoy this. It's people like you and people who just, despite having played a lot of Valhalla, just want more content, more things to do, more gear, that sort of thing. Then, you'll definitely find enjoyment here. But I don't think, if you're coming in expecting something drastically different, like you are going to be sorely disappointed because it does follow the same formula, with some tweaks in the sense of here's some black box missions, here's a few differences here and there. But yeah, otherwise it's just a stock standard expansion, I'd say.
That sounds good though. I'm very keen to give it a go. Just like Wrath of the Druids. So I hope that Ubisoft continues using these expansions to experiment with new features that might, possibly be in a new Assassin's Creed, like taking what works and what doesn't. So
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that the Siege of Paris is the second, DLC on their roadmap. Now, what comes next for Valhalla, I don't know. Like, do they put it to bed now and just do, the smaller updates, the small seasonal things, and then work on the next game? Or do they come out and say, well, we've seen that this game's still very popular. Here's another expansion set in, I don't know, Rome, for argument's sake, whatever. Like they just nitpick other parts of Europe in the same time period to, continue experimenting and or give players just more content to mess around with. So yeah, we'll see, I guess.
Nice. Well,
Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you for plunging back into the boots, the sheepskin boots of Eivor.
What is it called? The animus.
Picking up that hammer and shield again, and bludgeoning priests is all I heard that you did. So I'm glad you spent your time wisely in the Siege of Paris.
It was a good time.
If you don't know, this is Checkpoint Chat. We record a podcast every week. The Checkpoint Chat podcast. Well, we don't really call it that. We just call it Checkpoint Chat.
We should call it that.
It's out every Monday on pretty much every podcast platform you can think of. It's also published on YouTube, where you're probably watching this. So if you like this and want to hear more, follow us. Check out all our other cool stuff because there's stuff.
All of the things. Yeah, we do lots of things.
Let us know if you are planning to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, The Siege of Paris, which is a real mouthful when you say it all together.
It really is. And it's out.
It's out, I think.
12th? 12th
yeah,
of August?
the 12th of August. What is today?
Yeah.
Oh, today's the 11th.
Yeah.
So tomorrow or today or whenever
Today,
you're watching
whenever
this.
you listen.
Yesterday. A year ago. Who knows?
Wow. It's so far in the future.
You never know. But thank you so much for giving me the rundown of this expansion.
All
Matthew.
good. No worries.
We'll see you next time. Okay.
Cool.
Bye.